You know, you all know about the protests. I mean, at one point there were 100,000 or more protesters in and around our state capitol. They were banging on the drums. They were blowing the horns. They had signs and banners. I guess in a way I almost have to apologize because the Occupy movement started in Madison, Wisconsin 4 years ago and then went to Wall Street. So my apologies for that. But more than just the protest, I think the bigger challenge for us, at least for me personally, were all the death threats and the visits to our home. You see, you heard about those protests, but you may not know at one point in all of this, there were literally thousands of protesters out in front of our family home in Wauwatosa, where my two sons were still going to high school and where my parents were living at the time. In fact, my kids were targeted on Facebook. And at one point, I remember my mother in her 70s and my youngest son, Alex, were literally at the grocery store where protesters followed them down the aisle just to yell at them, even though it was me that was doing the policies out there. Even more so than just the visits in front of our home was the fact that at one point the threats were just overwhelming. Most of those death threats were pointed at or directed at me. But some of the worst were directed at my family. I remember one of the ones that bothered me the most was someone literally sent me a threat that said they were going to gut my wife like a deer. Another time, a protester sent a threat directly to my wife that said if she didn't do something to stop me, I would be the first Wisconsin governor ever assassinated. The writer went on in greater detail to point out where exactly my children were going to school, where my wife worked, and where my father-in-law was still living at that time. You can see what they were doing. And so I tell you today that thanks to all of you, not just for the grassroots support and the donations, but most importantly, again, thank you for those prayers, because you can see how important they were in dark days like that. Time and time again, the protesters were trying to intimidate us. But you know what? All they did was remind me how important it was to stand up for the people of my state. They reminded me to focus on why I ran for governor in the first place. We need leaders who understand that when freedom-loving people anywhere in the world are under attack, anywhere else they're under attack against all of us who believe in freedom.